Hello, everyone, guys. I hope everyone's keeping well. So, let's get started with another part to the Parajumbles, to the verbal ability section we've been covering so far. We've had a lot of sessions on Parajumbles, but today it's going to be more of additional questions and very different from what we've done. I have again introduced these Parajumbles with options. You can try solving them without options as well. Okay. So first to quickly brief you on what is theta section of CAT and how many questions for parajumbles can we expect? What is the percentage of section of theta in CAT? So theta is basically type in the answer type, wherein you are not given any options but a blank box. Right? There would not be any options. This question type is going to be totally subjective for you, and you are supposed to type your answer in the chat in the blank box rather than just choosing an option, right? So catch, as we all know, it is about VARC, right? The English portion of cat is all about VARC. So when it comes to the RC part, of course RC is totally objective. Okay, there would be no surprise though. There might be tonality questions being asked under subjective, but the RC part is totally objective, that is with options. Okay, but when it comes to questions like parajumbles, para summary, odd man out, right? All these question types, they lie under verbal ability. When we say verbal ability, it is more about understanding, the questions from the subjective perspective. So subjective means there would be no options. That's why they are called theta, that is type in the answer type questions. Now here we do have a section of being penalized, that is there is negative marking, right? But in your verbal ability, in your theta part, there is no negative marking. That means you can attempt all the questions. But having said that, it doesn't mean that they do not penalize us on time. They do penalize us, not in terms of marks, but in terms of time. So we've got to be very, very cautious on how much of a time are we investing, how many minutes are we investing on that particular question, right? And as I told you, Parajumble is all about a coherent, meaningful paragraph which is derived out of the jumbled sentences when you try to unjumble them, when you try to sequence them in a particular order, right? So then you get the right sequence of sentences and you try solving them. And since CAT doesn't give us options, so we don't really know how to start, how to end. Though there were certain strategies, there'll be certain strategies which I'll be sharing with you right after this, 2 minutes discussion. Parajumbles may we do get to understand how can we identify the opening and the closing sentence, but the middle four sentences or the middle two sentences, how do we figure out the sequence for that? We do not have any option to give us a clue on, and henceforth it's very important, it's very crucial for us to understand कि ये जो पैराजम्बल सेक्शन है इसको विदाउट ऑप्शंस कैसे करना है, कितना टाइम इन्वेस्ट करना है, और कहाँ पे अगर हमें लगता है कि we've been investing in a lot of time and still we are not able to get the answer, we do not invest in more getting emotionally driven. Okay, so parajumble, as I said, can be solved one by looking at the generic to specific approach, right? When we say generic to specific approach, we always try to look for those sentences which can be the opening and the closing bracket. As I told you, opening bracket is more about introduction, and the closing sentence is more about coming up with an opinion or a final decision. Okay, it could be an opinion, it could be the final decision which is there. The middle two sentences are going to be the specific part. When we say specific part, it is like if I'm talking about sports in general, that's where we talk about FIFA, right? And then I start talking about sports in general again, right? So the idea is you're getting generic to specific, and then at the end you again get generic with your opinion or views about something. Okay. Second thing is we always look for pronouns being used, articles being used, and try to identify what is that article referring to, right? For example, a bank. So there must have been the bank which has been already referred, and that's why we're talking about that particular bank. If we have something with it, they, so what are these policies? What are these pronouns referring to? We look for their antecedents. That is the nouns they are used in place of. Okay. Third thing is you can always look for the tense, time, chronology. Okay. So when it comes to tense, it's always the past, then we have the present tense, and last of all, we have the future tense. Okay. So when it is the past section, it is something which is already over. Okay. When it is a present, it is the current moment. And when we're referring to future, it will have more of will shall. Okay. So this is yet to come, yet to happen. Okay. So we have past, we have present, we have future. So when it comes to dates, right? When it comes to chronology, we can always look at what happened in 1970, and then we are talking about, say, 1995, then coming to 2000, and then maybe 2015 and 25, right? So always a sequence of dates is going to be from what happened earlier, that's again the past, near past, and then the latest, that is present or future, right? If there are some options being given, you know, some options, some reasons, some parameters, or some factors of dependency, okay, then we always and always look for, firstly, secondly, thirdly, and then also, moreover, so first, second comes first, and then you have also and moreover, that takes the latter part of it. Okay. So these are the few things which you can look for when you are trying to solve the questions. Now I'm going to show you some good questions, guys, and we're going to start with let me just pull in the right thing. Just a moment, guys. Yeah. So this is the first question, guys, we're going to start with. I hope it's visible to you again. Right? So we look at certain strategies and try to solve the questions. Please have a look at this question. There are 5 sentences, and I want to create a question type for you that is without options first. If you would still want, I'll give you the hint, but I do not want to give you right away. So we would try solving it without options first, just like what we have in CAT. And then I'll move you to the one where we do not have, like, we can look at the options just to have a poll or quickly understand. Okay. So first you try it on your own. Only then do I help you out with the answers and the options. Okay, let me know if you're done. We can discuss it. So try to identify which is the most generic sentence. What can be the opening sentence? The one that introduces the claim of the author. Then you can try looking for something that is using, a pronoun or any article which can be connected. Look for the sentence which has the main context and how do we then relate it to the specific sentences. Take 30 seconds, then we discuss it. Okay, let's have a look at the question. It says, in a bit to placate as it to calm down, to pacify. Okay, so in a bid to placate the associate members, the ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams to 16, right? Decided to increase. So maybe there was a situation wherein, only five teams were allowed to participate in ICC, Indian Cricket Council or whatever it is. But now that number has been increased from 5 to 16. And that happened through a lot of furore. Furore का मतलब है lot of chaos happened. ठीक है, lot of furore, lot of chaos happened. This is how you furore and chaos. Okay, lot of chaos happened. Only then was that number increased from 5 to say 16. Now it says the bid to placate the associate members in order to calm them down, the ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams to 16 in the 2020 World Cup. As the game's governing body feels these countries will have a greater chance of completing on an equal footing in cricket's shortest format. Okay. It is convenient just now to forget that in the last edition of the tournament, considerable criticism was heaped on the governing body for the inordinate length of the tournament, thanks in large part to the presence of the associates. To be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the number of teams in the next edition of the Cup is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So, in order to be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move. Now, this seems to be something which is in the center. ICC's decision to restrict the number of teams in the 2015 has evoked mixed responses with opinion divided among players of the full. So, this is like on the calming side. So, something that happened later on. What might have happened earlier was a decision. So, this might come first. Not surprisingly, associate members aren't too thrilled about the idea of being kept out of cricket's showpiece event. So naturally, we should start with four, right? Do you get this, guys? That why should we start with four? Because that gives a hint of the sentence, picking up well. So we start with four. ICC's decision, you can look at these options as well. Most of them start with D. So we start with four because it says the decision to restrict the number of teams in 2015 World Cup has evoked mixed responses. Now, what was the response like? What did we feel? To be fair to ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the number of teams in the next edition of Cup is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right? Are we good with this? It could start with four. It could also start with three. Can we? We should not, right? It should start with four. Now, can we have three after this? Do you think we should have C after this? Decision to restrict the number of teams has done this. A lot of furore. Not surprisingly, associate members aren't too thrilled about the idea of being kept out of cricket's showpiece event, right? So they're not really happy. It could be 4-5. It could also be 4A or 4-1, right? Let me make it 1. In a bid to placate the associate members, ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams. अब उसका solution क्या है? अगर आपने 4-5 भी किया हो, right? Even if you do 4-5, can we have A after this? Yes. So in a bid to placate, अब क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं? हम उनको pacify कर रहे हैं. ठीक है? As the game's governing body feels these countries will have a greater chance of competing on an equal footing in cricket's shortest format, it is convenient just now to forget that in the last edition of tournament, right? Either it could be this or it could be we could have, I think D A C should have been there, or we could also have D E A. That's what we picked, and then C and then B. To be fair to this, criticism of the move to restrict the number. In case of damned if you do, damned if you don't, and then you have 2. It is convenient just now to forget that in the last edition of the tournament, considerable criticism has heaped on the governing body for this, thanks in large part to the presence of associates. Do you think it's a good option? Or the second option could have been 4-1 and then maybe 5, maybe 3. 4-1 means it is a bit to placate this. To be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the number of teams is a case of damned. It could be this, it could be that. And then you have 3, and then if you go for say E and B, that is you go for 5. Not surprisingly, state members aren't too thrilled about the idea. It is convenient just now to forget no. So 2 to last में आएगा, that is for sure, right? Which options feels better? It is 4-5-1, 3-2. Why is it so? If you look at the sequence, guys, we start with the fourth one. Why do we start with fourth one? ICC's decision to restrict the number of teams. What was the problem? What initiated? What triggered that furore is important, which is in sentence number 4. So it starts with ICC's decision to restrict the number of teams in 2015 World Cup has evoked mixed responses, with opinion divided among players of the full member teams, right? Then we go for 5. Not surprisingly, the associate members aren't too thrilled about the idea of being kept out of the cricket's showpiece event. And then you have 1. In a bid to placate the associate members, the ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams to 16 in the 2020 World Cup, as the game's governing body feels that these countries will have a greater chance of competing on an equal footing in cricket's shortest format. So you have 4-5, you have 1, then you have 3-2. To be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the number of teams in the next edition of the Cup is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And second, it's convenient just now to forget that in the last edition of the tournament, considerable criticism was heaped on the governing body. Like, why was it done? A lot of criticism was there on the governing body for the inordinate length of the tournament, thanks in large part to the presence of the associates. So, like, very sarcastically, they're saying thanks to the large part of the associates who created all of this, furore and chaos. So, let's move to the next question now, right? This is pretty simple. Let's try this one. Giving you 20-30 seconds, then we discuss it. All right, can we discuss the question now? So it says environmental education unit of Center for Science and Environment has always been working towards providing easy to understand reading material. Okay, so this is one organization or unit we are talking about, and the guys at the Center for Science and Environment has always been working towards providing easy to understand, comprehensive material. The new publication on the subject is an attempt to lend teachers a helping hand. What they're trying to do, it's just to help the teachers understand the concept comprehensively and then pass it on to the students. And why and how is this subject being worked on? It is divided into two sections: climate change, how to make sense of it all, and natural resources, how to share and care. So, naturally, 3 and 4 seems to be more of a good pair. However, they're introduced to students not as a paragraph to memorize, but as an activity to do. So, this is again an extension of how the activity needs to be done, or how the subject knowledge needs to be passed on to the students. So initially we are talking about the teachers, how this particular subject in this unit is helping the teachers to understand the comprehensive way of understanding environmental education, and then further on how do they pass it to the students in the form of and not a paragraph to memorize, right? So don't you think that the entire sequence of sentences is already in a comprehensive paragraph rather than a jumbled passage to give into you, right? So we start with one: environmental education unit of Center for Science and Environment has always been working towards providing easy to understand reading material. Second, it says publication of the subject is an attempt to lend teachers a helping hand. Then it has two sections to it: climate change and then natural resources. And last of all, they're introduced to students not as a paragraph to memorize, but as an activity to do. Right? So the sequence unfolds as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 itself. There's nothing to do much about the sequence since it's already in place. Okay. So answer is A, B, C, D, E. It should be option number three here. Is everyone aligned on this, guys? Okay. Let's move to the next one. Let's try this one. Do you think it's an easy question? This is more of a descriptive kind of a paragraph. A famous Japanese rock garden is at Ryoanji in northwest Kyoto, Japan. The rocks of various sizes are arranged on small white pebbles in five groups, each comprising 2 and 3 rocks. Garden is 30 meters long from east to west and 10 meters from north to south. Garden contains 15 rocks arranged on the surface of white pebbles in such a manner that visitors can see only 14. And then there are no trees, just 15 irregularly shaped rocks of varying sizes, some arranged by gravel sand that is raked every day. Okay, so we start with an introductory sentence, as I said. So, famous Japanese rock garden is at this. Okay, you start with naming the garden. What is it? It's a Japanese rock garden. So, A should be the opening, like one should be the opening sentence. Okay, it starts with one. Then the rocks of various sizes are arranged on small. Which rock garden is it? The garden is 30 meters long. We might go with the length and breadth of it, right? So we can go with the third sentence that it is 30 meters long, east to west, and 10 meters from north to south. Then it contains 15 rocks arranged. Maybe we can have, you know, something based on uh, shaped rocks of varying sizes, some arranged by gravel sand. Garden is this. Huh? So we can go with five now, right? Five seems to be cool with this. So 135 ACE. Yeah, A should be the answer for this. And then you go with the rocks of various sizes are arranged in some manner. The garden contains total kitne 15 rocks arranged on the surface of white pebbles in such a manner that visitors can see only 14 of them. That's something unique about it, right? So 13524, that is A, C, E, B, and D, right? So answer is A, option number one. Okay. How did you figure out? We looked for the most generic sentence first. That is the Japanese rock garden. What is the name? Northwest Kyoto, Rionji, right? Which is in Northwest Kyoto. Then we start with referring to the length and breadth, the dimensions of the garden mentioned. Then you have no trees but 15 irregularly shaped rocks of varying sizes arranged somewhere. Rocks are various sizes arranged on white pebbles in five groups, so and so. Garden contains 15 rocks arranged to the surface of 15 pebbles. That is it. So 13524 sequence completed. Okay, let's try this one now. Guys, let me know if you need some help here. Always try to look for the context first. Which sentence sets the context? And then, what are the pronouns being used? Right? If there is any specific, like once upon a time this happened, one of the Buddha's disciples, this silently gazed at the flower. So this becomes a little specific to the point. And then, this sequence of sentences seems to be more of narrative. It's like a narration of a sequence of sentences coming up an event, like coming up in a form of an event. So you can look for that particular sentence which opens up that sequence, then look for the chain elements which sentence takes up the context ahead towards something specific. And then how do we close it at the end? How do we opine about it? Look for that. So when they gathered together, the Buddha was completely silent, and some speculated that perhaps the Buddha was tired or ill. Who gathered? I need to find the antecedent for this. I need to look for what is my pronoun hitting at. It is said that Gautam Buddha gathered his disciples one day for a dharma talk. One of the Buddha's disciples, Mahakasyapa, silently gazed at the flower and broke into a broad smile. Origin of Zen Buddhism is ascribed to flower sermon, the earliest source which comes from the 14th century. Buddha silently held up and twirled a flower and twinkled his eyes. Several of his disciples tried to interpret that this meant, though none of them was correct. Okay, so it is said that Gautam Buddha gathered his disciples one day for a dharma talk. Maybe it starts with two. You can look for the sentences as well. Okay, one of the Buddha's disciples silently gazed at the flower. So this might come later. Origin of Zen Buddhism is ascribed to the flower seven, the earliest source, which comes from the 14th century. This could also be the opening sentence. It could start with four. Okay. Then it is said that Buddha gathered his disciples one day for a dharma talk. Maybe it is said that Gautam Buddha gathered his disciples one day for a dharma talk. It should be two after this, which seems to be a very good option to me. Right. So let's go with four, then two. One day for a dharma talk. Now, what happened when they gathered together? What happened? Buddha was completely silent, speculated that perhaps the Buddha was tired or ill. Silently held up and twirled a flower, twinkled his eyes, and one of the Buddha's disciples silently gazed at the flower and broke into the broad smile. The Buddha silently held up and twirled a flower, twinkled his eyes. Huh? So it should be three and then five. One, three, and then five. So five or three. Yeah, that's where the game is. It could also be four, two, one, five, three. Now it's going to be three or five, three. How do we decide? The moment we say, okay, when they gathered together, Buddha was completely silent. Some speculated that perhaps the Buddha was tired or ill. Okay. Then the Buddha silently held up and twirled a flower. So this would happen first. Okay, five should happen first. And then one of the Buddha's disciples, Mahakasyapa, silently gazed at the flower. When he twirled the flower, the other one gazed at the flower. So this is the correct sequence and not this one. 4, 2, 1, 5, 3. That is how the sequence comes up. So did you guys see that we were initially thinking of going for 3, 5? But when you minutely looked at the sentence, you realized here it should be 5, 3 and not 3, 5. That's how the sequence should come up. Okay. So make sure that you look for every sequence very, very particularly, right? If you find that there is some loophole in between, or somewhere things are not aligning with what I need, please make sure that you twist the sentence. You try to see first ye hona chahiye, second this should be the one. This is how it should complete. Okay, so this is the major context I wanted to put in today for the Parajumble questions. We're going to have more of such sessions. And I would want that whatever you read nowadays, guys, please read it from the lens of Parajumbles, from the verbal ability perspective. And since you do not have anything, like options or no options, try solving questions without options first. That's the best. Then maybe just to take a reference, you can look for options if you're trying Parajumble question right away. If you are just reading something, then see how are the sentences placed, which sentence opens up, which sentences closes, at the end, where are we coming up with something specific, and that will help you to have a better understanding of the narration of the paragraphs. Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for joining in. We'll be connecting again very soon. Make sure that you keep attending these sessions regularly, because we have a lot of concepts to be covered in the coming sessions. Thank you so much and have a great time ahead, guys. Thank you so much. We'll catch up very soon again.